Welcome to Heart of North Texas, a philanthropic podcast that celebrates the work of nonprofit organizations in the region. In each episode, we will bring you stories of compassion, resilience, and dedication from the people who are making a difference in the lives of others. This episode brought to you by Higher Energy Staffing. Ignite your workforce and fuel your future. And now, Zoe Martin. This is an exciting episode of Heart of North Texas because we're flipping the script and I get to interview Zoe. So Zoe, welcome to your show.
Thank you, buddy.
Yeah, so great to see you here and be seen, and also get a chance to talk to you about your why you host the Heart of North Texas. So let's start there.
All right. Well, Frito and I started it in 2023. In July, I went to him and I said, I've got a giving circle that I'm wanting to start. I only lived here for a year, so I didn't know a ton of people. But the idea of a giving circle, this particular one is called Caring for Collin County.
Yes.
So CCC is to get 100 people or 100 businesses together and collectively contribute $10,000 or more to a nonprofit. And I'd like to do that 4 times a year. I said, so in order to do that, raise awareness about it, get some more people to back that up, I would like to consider a podcast that features nonprofits, people who are doing good in the community. And what do you think about that? So Frito was like, oh man, I love that idea.
Great idea.
I pitched it to a sponsor 5 months ago and I was like, oh, that's incredible. What did they say? And he goes, I haven't heard back from him. I was like, oh, well, if you do, I said, if I can help in some way, I'd love to do that. And he was like, can you co-host?
Bingo.
I don't know. So he's like, sure you can. He's like, let's do this. And I was like, we don't have a sponsor. This was late July. So I said, January? He goes, no, September. So July we talked, August we started recording, September we aired, and then October 1st he passed away unexpectedly.
Yeah, how unfortunate.
It was so heartbreaking for me and so many people. I mean, he was very well loved in our community.
You bet.
And so that took us off the air and everything that we had recorded is gone. Yeah. And so I was super disappointed. I was very hopeful that someone would take the podcast on and nobody did. And so we were off air for essentially a year. Yeah. And at some point then in 2024, Jonathan connected us and he said, I think you need to meet Buddy. And so we had that conversation over the phone and you were like, I'd be willing to produce it if you want to host. And I'm like, that would be amazing. I don't know if you know it. Like I choked up when we were having this conversation because I was so tickled that you were interested.
Yeah.
And I had other people tell me they were interested, but there was no follow through.
Right.
And so I said, let's have a conversation like face to face and see what this would look like. And then October 1st of 2024, we got to relaunch it. And that was in honor of Frito's passing. Yes. So the Heart of North Texas is really, it's an honor of Frito.
Right, it is. And I didn't know him. I didn't have the honor of knowing him, but I knew people who did. And they suggested that I look into some of the people that he was serving. And then, like you said, Jonathan Gachera with Leafy Link Marketing Company introduced the two of us. And it was perfect timing because I just started, had just opened the podcast studio here at Caddo offices in the Maple Shade location like May. So within a couple months, we were introduced. Yeah. We got the show back up and running. And here we are. And here we are with the host. You host the show by yourself, and you're doing a great job. I think we're 15 episodes in now.
Wow. Appreciate that.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? Talk to me about the communities and the people that you've met along the show, people you want to serve. Give me the big why for Zoe.
Well, in Longview, that's when I started my business. I moved from Midland, Texas, where I worked in a photography studio for 5 years. Yeah. And we moved to Longview. I opened my own photography studio. And from there, I joined the Longview Chamber of Commerce, and I was in Leadership Longview and class 2020, best class ever.
Of course.
And that was interesting because, it was 2020. So we had some setbacks there.
Sure.
But when I joined the chamber, I was networking for the first time. I had never networked before. And people who know me in DFW, they think, they see me everywhere. But when I started, I was such a wallflower. And I remember I met this one woman, it was like young professionals, and I sat across from her and I thought, I don't want to ask the traditional, what do you do question? And so I said, what do you do for fun? And she was like, oh, I travel. I love to travel. And so we start having this conversation. And then she tells me about the 100 plus women of Longview who care. and explained that this was a giving circle and that, they collectively give $10,000 to a nonprofit. And the way that they did that was 4 times a year they met. They had optional to have dinner after, but they would have a meeting where 3 nonprofits would come represent, they were checked, verified to make sure they were in good standing and everything prior. But then the 3 of them would have, the executive director or somebody represent, explain the mission behind what they did, and then tell us what they would do with the $10,000 if they were chosen. And so each of those 3 would come, and then the women in the room, they would collectively vote and find out from the women in the room who would be receiving that $10,000 or more. And I thought, wow, that's incredible. I would love to do that. But at the time, I was a brand new business. There was no way I could afford $100 4 times a year. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're new, it is, right? And so I always had that in the back of my mind. And then I actually started or co-started a women's networking group in Longview. It was called SWIFT, Successful Women Influencing the Future Today. And there were 4 of us. Great idea. So the 4 of us were having the conversation about what this would look like, how often we would meet, what all we were going to do to be involved. And I said, there's this giving circle, and it's $100 4 times a year. There's 4 of us. What if we each contribute $25 and collectively give $100? As SWIFT. And so I presented it to Linda. Linda Fullman was the one who told me about the 100 plus women of Longview. And Linda said, well, nobody's ever presented that to us. Let me talk to the other committee and see what they think. And so they were like, yeah, the only thing is that only one of you can be present at the meeting so that you don't have 4 of you have a say in which one. And so we agreed that we would take turns rotating in who would go and then, come back to SWIFT and explain to all the women that, So that was cool. But the really, really cool part about that was the 4 of us presented to SWIFT, our networking group, and said, this is what we've decided to do. If you would like to contribute, what we'll do then is pitch in whatever doesn't come in. Well, that worked out really well because some of those women didn't know about the 100 plus women of Longview. And some of them not only contributed, but then also joined on their own. So that was really, really just super cool. They're not a nonprofit. They're an organization contributing to nonprofits. Yeah. Same with Caring for Collin County. Yep. Yeah. We're not a nonprofit, but the idea is to support nonprofits.
Right.
One of the things that worked on my heart when I was starting to learn photography, I did a lot of online education. I did some college courses, but the online education world, there's a woman named Sandy Putsch who has a photography studio in Colorado. And when she went through her presentation, she got to the end of the education and she said, I'm going to tell you all about an organization called Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep. And I was floored. I'm very emotional. I cry at the drop of a hat. And she's explaining this organization and how they honor families by giving them the gift of remembrance photography. And I thought, holy cow, I could not imagine being in the same room with a family who's lost a baby. And I was like, I can't do that. So I sat on it for 2 years, knowing in the back of my head that that was an option to give back. And during the pandemic, one of the photographers contacted me and said, Zoe, there's a family in Tyler. If you don't go, they're not going to have any portraits. And when she put it in that light, I was like, this isn't about me. Right. So I had actually signed up to be a community volunteer for Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep about 2 years after I learned about the organization. So I was never in a room with a family. I was more than anything like sharing, trying to get volunteers. And I actually went to a hospital in Longview and presented to the nursing staff, this is how it works. Oh, yeah. So that was fantastic. And so when I went to this family in Tyler, I just realized that it wasn't about me and my emotions didn't play a part in what this family was going through, right? The photography that I was providing for them was the only tangible thing, that they might have. So whether they could look at them right away after receiving the gallery, or maybe it was weeks or months or even years later, they would have the opportunity to have those images. And so I did apply to be an affiliate photographer for them.
Great.
So Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep is an organization I've been with for 9 years now.
Wonderful. And just knowing you for the time I've known you, which isn't even a year yet. I've obviously I produce your show and help get it published and whatnot, but I've heard all the stories, because I've listened to you do we proof the show,
Yeah.
and I don't know anyone that is as giving as you, and also hearing all of these stories and promoting all of these different organizations. It's really powerful what you do, and I think givers, whatnot, don't get a lot of recognition, and nor do, and I call myself a giver too. Probably not compared to you in the way that I compare myself to people, but it's so difficult for, I imagine, you to receive thanks, for the amount of giving you do. So it's important that, one, we get to hear from you, because you're hearing from so many others, and two is like, from a long-term perspective, you're growing these different organizations. Talk about some of the people that have been on the show and that we want to direct attention to, and then some of the others that haven't been on yet, but we definitely want to invite them as guests.
People don't even know, they might think that there's thousands of nonprofits in the area, but there's over 60,000.
That's incredible. Every time I hear that number, it blows my mind.
And me too.
So many. Yeah.
And so the problem with that, and this is one of the things with the giving circle, is that oftentimes people contribute financially in small amounts, and there's nothing wrong with those small amounts. It makes a difference. But even those small amounts, imagine if you were collectively contributing in a large amount. And so people have what's called giver fatigue, because they know this person who has this nonprofit and this, speaks to them. And so rather than giving a good amount that could, really make a dent in the nonprofit, they're giving small amounts and little increments here and there. So with the giving circle, the idea is that we're, making a dent in the nonprofits. So we have right now a spreadsheet for the Heart of North Texas of nonprofits. There's about 250, and people constantly, hey, tell me more about the podcast. And we have a list of people that are wanting to be on the podcast, and there's a huge variety.
Sure.
And there's like a horse, donkey, they protect them,
rescue of
there's
some type. Yeah.
There's a wildlife rescue.
Mm-hmm.
There's obviously human trafficking. There's domestic violence. We've got we just recently aired the episode with Simply Grace, and then the thrift store that supports it. We've got Backing the Blue. We've got veterans, children's advocacy. There's just the variety of things. One of the really cool ideas that Frito and I were having about it is that people have trouble knowing where to give back to because they're not aware of all of the options that they have.
The number one obstacle is awareness. Yeah.
So the podcast is really a resource, a hub where they can find out, that's, I didn't even know that was available. Holiday Cheer for Seniors was one of the ones that we had recently. And Holiday Cheer for Seniors sounds like it's probably a Christmas theme, but in reality, they've got something happening here for Mother's Day, and they need volunteers for that.
It's year round. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, every holiday.
You can donate your time as a volunteer. You can contribute financially, or the idea of getting like your group, whether it's a friend group, whether it's a business group, whether it's a networking group, and contributing, which is one of the cool things with the networking group that we're in, McKinney Downtown. Yep. We do things collectively as a community, helping put together the setup for empty bowls, going to the food bank in June. Before that, I was volunteering. I was with McKinney Downtown when we went to the Collin County Historical Museum and helped clean. Yeah. There's exhibits, so they need dusted and things. Yeah. So it's very cool for people to collectively do things, and it makes it more fun.
It does. More hands make short work of
For sure.
anything. And we come together as a community, and that's the whole point, is raising awareness for the community.
The Heart of North Texas is sponsored in part by
Higher Energy Staffing. Experience the transformative power of customized staffing and recruitment, scaled to your business needs. Ignite your workforce and fuel your future.
And now, back to the Heart of North Texas with Zoe Martin.
So Zoe, I know we're obviously Blue Mike Studios, which is my company, and of course you give your time. We're both giving our time and our resources for the show, but we've so far had some great sponsors. Of course, TJ Wheat with Credit the Cause. Basically, he was the one that you and Frito had talked to 2 years ago, or thereabouts to get it started. And he jumped back in and helped us get relaunched. But we're looking for sponsors just to help us with the production to make this a perpetuity production, to raise that awareness. Who do you think is ideal to support us?
Well, I'm going to back up a little bit.
Okay.
Since you're mentioning how that, the sponsorship is important for the perpetuity, I think it's also for the consistency.
Yes.
To where, we had launched
Every week or more.
Yeah. When we launched, it was a month that we were on air, and then we went off air. And then here in 2024, we were on air for 3 months, and then we went off air. Yeah. And so people don't understand how much time is involved, and this equipment, it's wonderful. It's professional equipment. We've got the recording, we've got the microphones, there's lighting, there's the cameras and the monitors, but then there's the back end time into hearing and cutting and making shorts and putting it out, downloading it. There's so much more involved in it.
And on the
just
front
recording.
end, you're scheduling. You're making time for yourself to be here, to research the guests, to sit down with them, make them comfortable, and then talk and make sure. And there's follow up that you have to do too.
Right.
So there's a lot of effort here. The more hands, but right now there's just a few pair of hands.
Yes.
And I know the good synergy partners are obviously people that want to do good. And best case scenario, they're already working in the nonprofit space.
Sure, they're on a board or they're volunteering, right? They've got something that's close to their heart, and the benefit of sponsoring is that, of course, they get their name on all of our show materials. They get it put in a commercial, and then the reels, we provide. I say we. You are really making.
This is a collective effort.
The reels are going out to them, so they can then promote that on their social media and their network. So they can say that they're a sponsor. So while 10 episodes would be great, I would really love to have a sponsor take us on for an entire year, so we don't have to chase checks and we don't have to keep asking, because I think the fee is very reasonable, and there's not a reason that someone shouldn't take this on. I'm actually surprised that we haven't had a sponsor be like, "Oh yeah, let's get behind this."
I think it's also the awareness. It's where we're building something, and it takes time.
Sure.
And so, we'll be doing this for a while. So we just encourage you out there, if you're watching or listening, if you know someone in an organization that wants to help us, and because it's not just this organization, our respective organizations, it's all of ideally these 60,000 organizations in this North Texas area that we want to have on the show. We want to benefit, get their word out, spread the message. So we have to ask, like they do. We have to ask for help.
For sure. Yeah. And that brings me to a point, 60,000 nonprofits here in DFW, the heart of North Texas. When Frito named it, I didn't come up with the name. I just agreed to it.
Oh,
the heart of North Texas is to spotlight DFW, and that, this is local, but I am not aware of another podcast that specifically features nonprofits and people who are doing good in the community. So it's such a center, local focused thing. And I think that is incredible. However, I have also been asked, because people are like, "Oh, I'm involved with this nonprofit and they're not, based in DFW. Is this something that I would consider, having on the podcast?" And so I've toyed around with the idea of that, and I put them on my spreadsheet, but I have a note where they're located, because if they're not based out of DFW, that would require a name change. But that would also open it up to sponsorship from a larger group of people.
Right.
And so I kind of feel like right now, if I can get a local sponsor, we can keep it local. Yep. But if I'm, not able to do that, maybe we do need to open it up to just feature nonprofits in general. There's a lot of national nonprofits that are based here.
Oh, absolutely. And not only that is Texas is a big state. We have a big heart. The heart of North Texas can go beyond Texas, So I encourage those who are listening, if you're outside of Texas, you can still get involved, and we can still benefit your organization in your area. And best case scenario, you have someone here that can represent you or is affected by your giving. So it doesn't just have to benefit or affect someone locally. It can affect somebody nationally, but it's still all us giving part of our heart and to play on the word, the heart of North Texas, so
Yeah.
we can be global if we need to be. So I appreciate that. And that's a very good point to make, is it's not exclusive. It's the opposite. We want to include everybody. Final thoughts, Zoe, as we close the show and encourage others to join us on next episodes.
Final thoughts is that we say we're featuring nonprofits, but the extra part of that is people who are doing good in the community.
Yes.
So the good deed doers, the people who are, behind the scenes getting their friend group together and contributing, we also want to feature them because we had one of the guests that was a principal of a school who had the 5th grade class say, we're going to do this community collection to where we can, give to a food bank and then La Tiendita in McKinney. So that school, I remember we did that when I was a kid, but how many schools don't do that? And very
So
easily
few.
could, right?
Yes.
And so hearing the stories from the people who are doing good in the community and the ideas that they've put together, it would encourage other people to do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the beauty of the podcast being all over the world is it's not just affecting us here locally.
Right.
Anybody could do this.
It's the spark.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Zoe, it's been a real pleasure kind of flipping here and getting a chance to speak with you directly as opposed to just producing the show and hearing your why and just spending time with you.
I appreciate you asking me to do it.
Thank you for being a part of the success of the Heart of North Texas podcast. This episode was brought to you by Higher Energy Staffing. Ignite your workforce and fuel your future. Please check our show notes for contact information for the program, our guests, and our sponsors, and please tag us on your social media. Please like, subscribe, and share. Thank you.